Hey guys, welcome back to The Stuff of Legend. My name is D'Lo and I'm bringing you guys all kinds of movie news and fun discussions revolving our favorite movies and TV topics. Let's go ahead and jump into the thumbnails. I want to show you guys all of the different topics we're covering today. We've got 4 main topics here, and then any questions or comments asked during the live chat, I will make sure to address either along the way or before the end of the video so that you guys can get your questions and comments brought into the video's discussion in the live. So what we've got talking today is the Snyder Cut is officially coming. And this is there's a lot of discussion going on around that. I'll talk about that, the experience, and kind of what this means, I think, for the movie industry moving forward. Whether for good or for bad, I want you guys to discuss with me. We've got also, this is not Boba Fett. There's a lot to that involving Timothy Olyphant's character, Temuera Morrison's casting. We're going to talk about that. I'll break into a couple articles with that. And Ruby Rose quits Batwoman. What? But season 2 is still greenlit. Interesting. We're going to talk on this and more with Colin Farrell playing the Penguin, giving us an interesting comment, which I think sparks a little bit of discussion about what we might expect. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video. Sup, guys? All right, so we're going to start out talking about the Snyder Cut. So the first part of this, we're talking about Snyder Cut. Let me go ahead and just jump in to a different screen so you guys can see exactly what I'm looking at here. It's this one here. All right, there we go. So now you guys can see what I'm looking at. There's an article here from Collider, and this talks about Zack Snyder confirms the Snyder Cut coming to HBO Max, and then it says Zod help us all. Now, everyone's got their opinion about the Snyder Cut. In fact, leading up until very, very recently, most people actually were in denial that the Snyder Cut even existed, that it was ever a possibility. You were considered a conspiracy theorist in an incorrect way of speaking, because it's not really a conspiracy, but conspiracy being a plot to overthrow the government. So that's not what that is, obviously. But in the terms of, you were considered illogical. You were looked down upon if you were the one touting, release the Snyder Cut, give us a Snyder Cut. There's footage. They've talked about this. People were like, dude, you're crazy. The longer that went on, the further along that went, the more we started to see that people asking for this thing out loud based on some comments that Zack Snyder had made, based on the fact that he left the project when his daughter had committed suicide. A lot of crazy stuff happened in the production of Justice League, which led to him no longer being part of the project, but instead Joss Whedon getting hired to complete the Frankenstein of a film that we got. Some people do really like the Justice League movie. I'm not one of those guys. I don't really like that movie. I think it was it should have been delayed. It should have been delayed so that he could have finished it himself. But that's not how filmmaking works. It's a business, and people put their money on the line and were expecting return by a certain time. So they pushed it out however they possibly could to try to make some of that money back. It looks like they're going to get to make more of that money now on HBO Max. Not nearly as much as they would have, probably. But nevertheless, this is what we're getting. So, for good or for ill, we are getting the Zack Snyder Cut. He's being given $30 million, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was $30 million, to finish the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. We have talked about that on our channel, on this channel, for a while now. Many others, long before myself, have discussed this. In fact, before we read this article real quick, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some of these posts. Now, this guy right here, movies that mar with the Viking. Sorry, I read that totally botched. Movies that mar with the Viking. This guy is awesome. He was the first person to tweet release the Snyder Cut. He's been going hard at this in the pavement since day one. Day one, this guy goes long back. I've had plenty of conversations with him. He's actually one of the people that actually got me on the Snyder train. What sparked my curiosity was when Momoa started putting out those videos, saying that he has seen some of the footage himself from the Snyder Cut, things that were not part of the original. When I say original, I mean the Whedon cut. Unfortunately, that's the terminology we're dealing with now. But many people have just been saying, look, HBO, Warner Bros., you want to make some money? Just let Snyder finish it the same way that you did a director's cut for Watchmen. Let Snyder come back and do his version of the movie he started in the first place. Whether it's going to be awesome or whether it's not, that's another thing. I think it'll be much better than the Whedon cut for a plethora of reasons. Specifically, I think the main reason that I think it'll be better in general is because it won't be multi-tonal. It won't be like these scenes are super dark and serious and realistic, and then these feel like the Avengers, for instance, which I'm not, me, I love the Avengers. But when you have very, very hard contrasting cinematic styles, storytelling styles, scripting styles, it feels like a Frankenstein. And that's kind of what the Justice League movie felt like to me, and many others. So you can see that right here. My guy, movies that mar with the king. He says, amazing, I'm emotional right now. So many people are excited about this, including myself. This sparks a question in my mind, and I hope that you guys can try to answer this in the comments because I want to hear your thoughts. The great debate has been whether or not you should just let a movie be, or if you should should filmmakers make films for the love of filmmaking, or should they make movies for the fans? And a third question is, does that have to be mutually exclusive? Does it have to be just one or the other, or can you have both? I think that making, and I think in Zack Snyder's case, doing the Snyder Cut is actually allowing him to fulfill the vision he started as a filmmaker, even though it was tampered with, obviously, by the studio. They saw Avengers making billions of dollars, and they were like, you got to make an Avengers instead of doing Man of Steel, Man of Steel 2, Man of Steel 3. They shifted his focus from that to Batman vs. Superman, and then again to Justice League. But he had a vision for those films even as he was adapted, until situations happened, and then he had to get pulled from the project. Not had to get pulled, but he left the project. I think filmmaking for the love of filmmaking, storytelling for the love of storytelling, and then giving the fans what they want, you can do both. If you yourself are a fan of the sort of that material, of that thing, you can make something that is visionary, something that is made for the love of making it, and still have it please the fans. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. You might, and if it is, answer the question whether or not you think it should be, giving the fans what they want. Because again, fans are customers. We're the ones paying for this. We're the ones that pay for the tickets, pay for the people front money so they can get a bigger return. That's how filmmaking works. We are that bigger return. So if we don't go see that film, they stop making the films. But if we're telling the studio, hey, we want Zack Snyder's version of the film. We didn't want the botched Franken-Whedon. That's a funny name for it. We didn't want the botched Franken-Whedon cut. We wanted the Snyder version of the film because he started it. It was his project. He should have been the one to complete it. Unfortunately, circumstances happen. We get it. You had all this money down. People have bills to pay. I get it. But nevertheless, it would not hurt you. It would only make you more money to let him come in and finish it, especially in this situation. There was a lot of speculation whether or not putting Snyder Cut into the theaters would actually lose money for the studio. But going straight to streaming, you don't have to put up all that money for promotion. I mean, this thing, the Snyder Cut, has been trending almost every day for like a year now. So it is its own promotion. I mean, Zack Snyder's been promoting it himself on Vero of all platforms. People have been getting Vero specifically to follow the Snyder Cut action that's going on, and people who are fans of DC, the DC universe, there's only been like two things that have propped up our attention towards Warner Bros. And DC EU. It's not been Joker. It's not been this upcoming The Batman movie, because those aren't even DC EU. It has been the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover with Ezra Miller, regardless of his April Fool's prank that everyone seems to forget was April Fool's, or the other thing that's propped it up has been the Snyder Cut. So, like, people calling for the Snyder Cut, bring in Henry Cavill. They gave this project for the HBO Max for the Snyder Cut. They're giving Zack Snyder $30 million to finish this film. He has a ton of the footage already, but I think he wants to shoot the scenes with Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern. Whether or not he already has those scenes, I'm not certain. I'm sure Movies with Mar could tell you that, actually. So if you go to his page and you just write him, just, hey man, was this finished? Do you know about this? He's a cool guy. He'll actually like communicate with you and be like, you know what? Here's what I know. Great dude. And the dude is loyal, dude. He's faithful. He's been here since day one. But yeah, so like everyone has corroborated the Snyder Cut up till now. Many people were skeptics. I think the last straw that broke the camel's back, or rather Warner Bros. Back, was when it finally got the attention, when it finally called the attention of John Campea. And when John Campea finally, because he's probably the biggest name in film punditry right now, even over Collider, I would say, because he was Collider, he was Collider, and then now he's his own thing. But John Campea, when he got on board with the release, the Snyder Cut thing, and he started to promote it and just say, just drop it on HBO Max, this is what we need. That's when HBO was like, all right, it's time. And plus, no one's going to the movies right now, so this is going to be the only way they're making money. This is it. Like everything is on streaming now, so you might as well launch your new streaming platform like everyone and myself have been saying for some time now. Just drop it on HBO Max. That's how you're going to get people to sign up. Even if they unsubscribe initially, the other content you have along with the Snyder Cut, whether it's released as one big movie or the 2 or 3 films that it was supposed to be originally, because I think Snyder wrote it as a trilogy, I think, and then they told him, no, cut it down to 2. So then it was going to be like Infinity War and Endgame. And then they eventually, when Whedon came on board, they're like, we're just going to make it one thing. Who cares about Apocalypse? Who cares about Darkseid? Who cares about Apocalypse? We're just going to do freaking Steppenwolf, and we're going to make him completely unrecognizable visually. He's going to be a gray blob with a horned helmet, like freaking Ares. It's gonna basically be the most forgettable villain you've ever seen. So no, it's better. Let's just get what Zack Snyder was gonna do. Let's see how that comes out. If it comes out like crap, it comes out like crap. But hey, we get the Snyder Cut. I'm excited for that. I'm really into that. If you give me like an alternate version, I don't know if you guys remember X-Men Days of Future Past. That you probably do. That movie has an alternate version. It's called the Rogue Cut, where the character Rogue, played by Anna Marie Paquin, if I'm remembering her name, she actually comes back, and she has several scenes in the movie where she's actually the main character that goes back in time, not what was supposed to be either Shadowcat or then Wolverine. She actually ends up being the main person going back in time and helping the adventure in the past coming back. And so that cut is really awesome. It did not make theatrical cut. They spent a little extra money to make sure those scenes got put together as an actual alternate version of the film. But I'm all about that. Make those alternate versions happen. I'm totally down. They did it for Watchmen with Zack Snyder. Warner Bros. Did it with Zack Snyder on another superhero franchise he did. They did an alternate director's cut version. They actually did 2 different versions of that director's cut. In this case, it's the same thing. It's the same studio. It's the same director. It's the same idea. Superhero film franchise gets an alternate version. Just let it happen. People are going to pay for it. People are going to be happy. We're the customers after all. So I know there's plenty of people that aren't going to buy it. But guess what? You already shot more than 80% of that film. You get $30 million to wrap it up, edit it together, finish the effects, the audio, that kind of thing. Maybe shoot a couple of extra scenes with Henry Cavill. If you can get Ben Affleck back in the suit, despite the fact he came out on Kimmel and said I'm done, all the better. That's super cool. Just let it come together. Let it have a nice happy ending. Whether or not it's better or worse than the Whedon cut is irrelevant. People are gonna pay to see it, and you're not gonna have to fork out a lot of money. You're only paying $30 million for this rendition, and you're basically gonna put no money down on marketing. Like almost nothing. So it's a win-win for the studio. I mean, you're going to make a killing on this. People are definitely going to see this. Really, really excited. So I'm not going to linger too hard on this. Just I want to go back over and just show you guys the tweets. This is HBO Max's official page, okay? So this is how you know it's verified, by the way. It's HBO Max's official page says, release the Snyder Cut only on HBO Max 2021. And they tagged Snyder, and they put the actual website here so that you can see that as well. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one up too so you can check that out. Boom. And this is the Warner Media website. So you can see that it is in fact coming. Los Angeles, it says May 2020, which was when this article was released. After global passionate fans calls to action and the Release the Snyder Cut movement, HBO Max and Warner Bros. Pictures announced today that it will exclusively world premiere Zack Snyder's director's cut of Warner Bros. Pictures DC feature film Justice League in 2021. That's a mouthful to say, but basically it's coming in 2021. Snyder surprised fans with the news this morning during a live online commentary of his film Man of Steel with Henry Cavill. That movie is amazing. It's super cool and super exciting the way that they broke the news to the fans. There was a big time watch along. I don't know if they're going to mention it here, but I think it was during the Geeks and Gamers watch along. You guys know Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers. He's like, hey everybody, it's Jeremy coming to you with another video, and today we have a video, the Snyder Cut. And like that kind of, I love his accent, and I actually do quite enjoy his videos. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's spot on about, for instance, Kathleen Kennedy in Lucasfilm. I disagree that she needs to step down from her position as executive producer. I do agree that she needs to step down as creative officer. That role should be split up. They should split that. But anyway, that's a separate topic. I do enjoy their videos actually, but again, don't agree with everything, but that's okay. That's not what it's all about. So anyway, you guys can enjoy all of this. So much here. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna read this part. It says here, quote from Snyder, I want to thank HBO Max and Warner Bros. For this brave gesture of supporting artists and allowing their true visions to be realized. Also, a special thank you to all those involved in the Snyder Cut movement for making this a reality, said Snyder. Really, really cool. It shows that the studios and the filmmakers, despite their clear and obvious falling outs and problems, can still come together for the love of money. And that's a good thing for us who are willing to pay to see these kinds of things. I'm definitely going to watch the Snyder Cut. You could bet on that. I'm going to do that. In fact, I'll probably even make multiple videos on the topic, and you'll get my thorough thoughts on the entire project. I'll probably even do a comparison of thoughts from the Whedon cut to the Snyder Cut, so that we can bounce it back and forth and talk about the pros and cons of both, and which one I think is better and which one you think is better. That'll be a lot of fun. I've never done a watch along. Maybe we could do a watch along at some point. I don't know if that's legal. Perhaps we'll find out. I'll look into it. But yeah, so really, really cool. I'm honestly kind of floored at like the fact we're getting this. You know what I mean? Because I know I've talked with friends online, other YouTubers. We've had discussions and debates about whether or not fan casting, for instance, you guys know I do a ton of fan casting on this channel, whether or not fan casting is good, or is it fans being spoiled? And I think, for one, as long as you don't expect it to happen, it's totally just fun and games. It's fine. It's fun. It's like imagining, oh, this guy he would be really cool in that role because of this or because of that, or because of his physical dimensions, or his previous career, what he's known for doing, his skills as an actor, or even a stunt performer in certain cases. I think fan casting is a blast. It's so much fun. I don't think it's a problem at all. But some people I've talked to, share perfectly valid opinions, stating that fan casting, for instance, is not. It's basically fans being spoiled, thinking they can get their way, now, or thinking that they know better than the actual filmmakers or actual casting directors. I will say this. Based on some movies and films that we've seen, I would say that fans, in some cases, are in fact better than the actual casting directors. If you see a film that turns out like garbage and the acting is garbage, you already know that there's plenty of other options that probably would have worked better. It's not always the actor's fault. Sometimes it's script, sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's the environment they were trying to make the film in. The direction could suck. Actors could have been having a horrible day. But the end result is what matters. Did it come together and did the actor perform when they were asked to? And I could give a couple of examples of that. I'm not trying to pick on anyone, so I won't. I'll keep my mouth shut on this one. But in the same spirit, who's paying for the film? Who's paying to make the film, to keep the films coming? It's the fans. The fans are, at the end of the day, I think they're customers, right? We're all customers for these films. People will make films that they can afford unless they know that if they invest a lot, they'll get a good return. If they believe they can get a good return, then they will make that film and they'll put a bigger budget on it. That's why the Avengers didn't start with the Avengers. It started with Iron Man. They started small, worked within their means, and then built and built and built and allowed the projects to continue to fund themselves by the fans pouring out and being like, this was awesome. This is everything we wanted as a fan. As a fan of Iron Man, this was so satisfying. As a fan of, the Incredible Hulk, we love this iteration, or we love this movie. It was really cool. We want another one we never got. Like Thor, Captain America, the list goes on and on. It just continued to pay off for the fans. So in the case of, like, for instance, Marvel Studios, that works tremendously. And it shows that if you give people what they want, they buy it. That's the whole supply and demand thing. If you give someone, that's why some people hate on capitalism. I think it's because they don't understand. It's not about like taking people's money. It's about giving them something they want, and they will exchange it for cash. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's about what you can offer so that you can get that return. It's not about just getting return. You don't get anything if you don't offer anything. Otherwise, that's theft. But trade, bartering, it says, I have this movie and it's awesome for comic book fans, or for, in this case, DCEU fans that are a little bit closer to the direction of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. Not that these films are as good, clearly not, but nevertheless, like, going for a slightly more realistic take on superhero concepts, that idea, going in that direction, it works. So people spend money. People spend money on what they want, and if you can make the customer want it, or if you can show them something that they want, they'll buy it. And so I think in the same way, fan casting works similar. It just says, this is what we want. If you can provide it, I'll buy it. It doesn't mean that if they show you something else you also like, you won't buy that. It's not saying I'm not going to buy anything unless it's my way. It's not my way or the highway. That's not how fan casting works. It's just fun. It's just like, this is what I would want. Give me something, anything close to this, and we got a deal. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what this operates like. To tie this back to the main topic, this releasing the Snyder Cut is the fans crying out for Warner Bros. To just let the right way happen. The right way was to let the filmmaker that started the project finish it. Even though there was a massive delay, like I'm under great sympathy for Warner Bros. In that situation. They were in a tight spot financially. They had to make that return happen. They couldn't wait forever, and they couldn't ask Zack to come back early either. He was grieving the loss of his daughter. So in that sense, they were in a massive pickle. They had to try to solve the problem, and the only way that they saw out was Joss Whedon coming in to wrap it up, in the only way that he knew how to do, which is different, obviously, than what we are going to get with Zack's version and vision. So I'm down. Let's get both. I don't care. I love Days of Future Past. I also love the Road Cut. It doesn't matter to me which one is better. I frankly think the original version is better, but I cherish the Road Cut. It's also a lot of fun, and it's a different take on the story, which is also great because you're dealing with a multiverse, or you're dealing with time travel, and you're dealing with like alternate futures and things like that. So not necessarily multiverse, but like time streams. So in that respect, that's kind of how I feel about this. So one last note is, this is just Zack Snyder acknowledging it as well, in case you had any more doubts. This is real. Release the Snyder Cut, HBO Max. And then he has the banner that says 2021, only on HBO Max, and it's scaled. I think that's what 9:16 or 16:9 or something, so that you can put it on the story on your phone. You just download the image and put it on the story, and then you can share it with everybody. Very smart, so that people can start sharing that, because you and me, we become promotion for this event. You and me become the ones that tell all of our friends, Snyder Cut just got confirmed. It's real. We all texted each other. Everyone got a text from their friend pretty much saying like, hey, dude, did you see about the Snyder Cut? Or, that kind of thing. And that's what's gonna happen on social media too. So it's pretty sweet. People are freaking out. I mean, you look at the comments here. Everyone's pretty much super, super stoked. A couple of people with some questions, obviously valid. I was not a fan of Doomsday. That was a crappy Doomsday, in my humble opinion. But the Ultimate Edition, I thought, added a lot of context to that, which I enjoyed. So again, and that's like where it comes in. It's like release an Ultimate Edition because the studio made you chop it short. That I'm totally down for alternate versions. The extended cuts of Lord of the Rings are such a blast if you have the time in the day to finish them. I love that. So to me, this is, but I want to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to wrap up this topic because we talked about it for a while, but I've also linked down below this IGN article, as well as the other one from Collider. I did not tag the one from HBO Max, but it's linked in, I believe it's this article here. Yeah. So you can find this one. You just click on one of the hyperlinks here. I think it is. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think about the Snyder Cut being released and coming out on HBO Max. Are you going to sign up for HBO Max? Are you going to sign up specifically to watch the Snyder Cut? And are you excited? Do you think it's a good idea that the Snyder Cut is being allowed to be finished? Or do you think they should have just left it at the theaters? You tell me, you be the judge, and let's move on to the next main topic. The next main topic is Timothy Olyphant will bear Boba Fett's iconic armor in The Mandalorian Season 2. Now, we're going to read this topic because this one to me is very interesting and fascinating. And I think this is going to build up very nicely in Season 2 for some epic showdown. So let's go ahead and just read this because I think the article is going to speak for itself very nicely, and I'll give you guys some resources in the description so you guys can also not only read this and check it out for yourself, but also learn who the characters being referenced here, Cobb Vanth and Boba Fett and the histories thereof, so you guys can see that as well. So let's go ahead and read this. So it says, last week, I'll put the picture up here so you can see it. Last week, it was revealed that Justified and Deadwood star Timothy Olyphant had been cast in The Mandalorian Season 2 in an unknown role. Olyphant's casting is a story we have been chasing and trying to confirm for months now, and we didn't get to break the news, but we do have some juicy information to add regarding Olyphant's Mandalorian Season 2 role, which established Star Wars character Which established Star Wars universe character is Timothy Olyphant playing in the upcoming season? And why is he wearing Boba Fett's iconic armor? Here are the details. So let's go down here. I'm going to go ahead and pause that because that's distracting. It says this. Who is Cobb Vanth? Cobb like corn on the cob. And Vanth, I don't know what that is supposed to be similar to, but you can just read that for yourself. It says here, our sources have confirmed to us, and again, it's our sources, but this is a reputable site. So, take it with a slight grain of salt, but they're saying that they've been sitting on some knowledge and they have credible sources that are verifying this. So again, a little bit of a grain of salt, but at the same time, I think this lines up very, very nicely. So I'll explain why I think that's credible. Sources confirmed to us Olyphant filmed scenes wearing Boba Fett's Mandalorian armor for the upcoming second season of The Mandalorian. That might sound confusing because earlier this month it was reported that Temuera Morrison, who originated the role of Jango Fett, Boba Fett's clone father, had been cast as Boba Fett, which is true. It says, so what's going on here? If Temuera Morrison is playing the role of Boba Fett, then Timothy Olyphant is playing an enigmatic character named Cobb Vanth, introduced in the Chuck Wendig's Aftermath book series, Vanth is the self-appointed sheriff to the Tatooine-based settlement Freetown. He wears a mysterious set of Mandalorian armor that was acquired from Jawas who scavenged the wreckage of Jabba the Hutt's sail barge shortly after the events of Return of the Jedi. By the way, The Mandalorian Season 1 takes place 5 years after Episode 6, which is when Jabba's sail barge went down in the sand dunes of Tatooine. So, and again, that's the same moment that Boba Fett was swallowed by the Sarlacc pit. So the Sarlacc pit, again, I don't know if you guys remember this. Critical note, Episode 6 sets up Boba's survival with a simple phrase, with a simple line. When they're about to toss Luke and all the good guys into the Sarlacc pit, Jabba is speaking and C-3PO is translating, and Jabba says, listen, he says, the Sarlacc pit is 1,000-year death, and it's basically you are getting digested for about 1,000 years. Now, no one's going to last 1,000 years on their own. You'll starve to death. You'll dehydrate before you get to that point for sure. But you're being burned alive by acid slowly. Slow digestion. It's almost like the tales and the lore of, for instance, the historical document of Jonah being swallowed by the great fish, or most people believe it to be a whale, but the text says fish. Basically, Jonah being swallowed by that is where they get the idea for the Sarlacc pit. It's just someone being swallowed alive by a creature, and the death is not by being chewed up, it's by slowly being digested over time. You'll likely just die on your own of starvation, and so that's kind of what they allude to by saying it's 1,000-year death. 1,000-year death. And that's all you really need to know. So when Boba Fett falls into the pit, there's other books that suggest that Boba Fett did get out alive. I think it was thermal detonators. Once he fell into the Sarlacc pit, he used thermal detonators to blow it up from the inside. And then I think he used blades to climb out or something. He somehow got out of the pit. And after that point, the armor was severely damaged by acid from the stomach acid. I'm not sure how because I didn't read the book series, but I believe either he had to abandon certain armor or it was compromised armor. But the Jawas found some of Boba Fett's armor in this book, in the Aftermath book series. They found his armor, and they ended up selling it to a guy, Cobb Vanth, who made himself the self-appointed sheriff in a town called Freetown on Tatooine. Which again, same planet, same sand dunes as where Jabba's barge went down. The Sarlacc was where Boba Fett was swallowed. All of that happens on Tatooine. All of that happens in what we believe to be the same general area. Probably within a day's trek. I would imagine. Obviously, there's no specific map for that, but I'm imagining it's probably that close. Even if it's not, even if it was on the opposite side of Tatooine, it's still on Tatooine, and there's a reason for that. Episode 5, and then it gets here into this. I'll just go ahead and read it because I think the thought process written down is so much smoother than my own ramblings, so I'll spare you guys that part of my thought process. So it says here, as you may recall, that was the site of the battle where Boba Fett was thrown into the Sarlacc pit in the Tatooine's Dune Sea. It's assumed that the Mandalorian armor was purchased by Vanth is none other than the infamous green armor formerly worn by the galaxy's most notorious bounty hunter, Boba Fett. And so I think what's going to happen, long story short, I think Cobb Vanth is actually going to be wearing the armor of Boba Fett, and Temuera Morrison is Boba Fett, but he just doesn't have that armor. He might have new armor. He might have crafted new armor, or he might be going simply as himself, as Temuera Morrison. Would be really cool. I hope that they get into a skirmish or a fight or a shootout, and then Boba Fett has to take back his armor. But this is interesting, so let's go ahead and just take a look down here. Very little has been revealed about Vanth's backstory. Once only that he was once a slave, as evidenced by a star-shaped scar carved into his back signifying ownership. With the fall of the gangster Jabba the Hutt, a power vacuum has consumed Tatooine. Makes sense. Drawing all sorts of crime syndicates to take over the unruled landscape, Cobb has committed his life in the service of protecting Freetown and keeping criminal elements like the Red Key Raiders away from Tatooine. He even struck a deal with the Tusken Raiders to help protect the township. It should be noted that all of the above character details were revealed during the Aftermath book series. We don't know what part or what he plays. I'm sorry. Let's just skip that first. Those two words right here. We don't know what part he plays in the upcoming season of The Mandalorian, but I think the books offer a rad setup for the character. In the Aftermath series, gave the impression that while Boba Fett may be dead, the iconic armor would live on for another generation. But if Fett himself was still alive and present in The Mandalorian Season 2, this complicates things. And we know that Boba Fett will, in fact, be in The Mandalorian Season 2 because on IMDb, it's already confirmed that Temuera Morrison is back, has already shot scenes, and has played Boba Fett. We don't know who almost said Cobb Vanth. We don't know who Timothy Olyphant is playing for sure, but we do have reports from these sources that he shot scenes in the Mando armor of Boba Fett. And if he was in Boba Fett's armor, there is a very reliable character from the Aftermath series that had that same story where he took armor that was presumed to be Boba Fett's armor. So I think we're going to likely see Boba Fett show up, but it not be Boba Fett. And then we're going to find the real Boba Fett without his armor or in a new set of armor coming in and either making his appearance or making that final stand or being like, you stole my identity kind of thing. I'm the real Boba Fett. There's only room or there's not enough room in how does that phrase go? I keep forgetting. This town ain't big enough for the two of us. That kind of thing. So I think that'll be pretty cool. Plus, it adds to the Western feel to have the sheriff and the criminal lowlife fight, and then there's moral ambiguity between the two. You don't even know if the sheriff's in the right on this one because he's got the armor of one of the most deadly, mercenaries in the galaxy, one of the most deadly bounty hunters in the galaxy. So that's going to be a really, really cool showdown. I do think this is credible. It makes total sense. And then this is where it gets into the scene from episode 5. And when I say episode 5, I don't mean Empire Strikes Back. I mean episode 5 of Mandalorian Season 1. Episode 5, Mandalorian Season 1. It says, who was the mysterious gunslinger? In The Mandalorian Season 1, the episode titled The Gunslinger, a mysterious figure was teased, sporting the bounty hunter's trademark spurs. In that episode, the Mandalorian agrees to help a young bounty hunter named Toro Calican acquire a target on the desert planet of Tatooine. Their search for the assassin Fennec Shand Ming-Na Wen takes them across the Dune Sea. Oh, pardon me. I'm not going to highlight this because it's messing with my cursor. So let's just go ahead and keep doing this part. They need to cross the Dune Sea, which is home of the Sarlacc pit, seen here. That was thought to have killed Boba Fett. Calican takes out Shand and tries to double-cross the Mandalorian, leading to his own death. In the final moments of the episode, we see a mysterious character approaching the seemingly lifeless body of Fennec Shand. Hold on, my thing keeps jumping around. Where did I go? We can see and hear the bounty hunter's trademark spurs and cape hangs down, reminiscent of the one Fett may have worn. Is that character Boba Fett or is it Cobb Vanth? I think this is a brilliant tease. So I'm just going to stop reading this article at this point. If you want to finish it, go ahead and either read it here while I'm talking, or you can read it linked in the description below. But basically it's the perfect setup. You see that someone approaches the lifeless or seemingly lifeless body of Fennec Shand at the end of the episode called The Gunslinger. And The Gunslinger is a very Western name. It does tend to reference, like either a criminal, a rogue, a cowboy or something, a lone wolf, or even the sheriff himself. And in Western characters, Western storytelling. it makes a lot of sense because it also adds that element of mystery when they finally reveal the armor of Boba Fett and then he takes the helmet off and it's totally not Boba Fett. That's also a really fun plot twist. We might see Boba Fett, the armor of Boba Fett, doing some fights, tracking people down, behaving like a sheriff, and then at the end of it all, he takes the helmet off, kicks up his boots, and you see that it's Timothy Olyphant instead of Temuera Morrison. That would be a really interesting way to play that out because it would be him in the armor. So, to me, I'm really excited. I do think that this is credible. Let me know what you guys have to say about this. I won't linger on this too much more, but I will wait for your thoughts. So anyways, thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next topic of the day. And the next topic of the day is... Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry. I wanted to show you really quick. Michael Biehn and Timothy Olyphant are two of the people right now that do not have credits as official released character titles so far. Like, we do see Temuera Morrison right here is Boba Fett, and we do see Rosario Dawson is Ahsoka Tano. We do see Katie Sackhoff is Bo-Katan Kryze, but we do not see anything for Timothy Olyphant or Michael Biehn. I think Michael Bihn's possibly rare. Might not happen. Probably not. Actually, I won't say probably because I do believe it would happen. I think he's going to play Cad Bane, and I do think that Timothy Olyphant will probably be playing Cobb Vanth. Would be super, super cool. So, that's almost all I have to say for you. The article pretty much summed it up, but I put the fandom wiki in the description below so you can check out Cobb Vanth's page as well and acquiring the Mandalorian armor so that you can verify that for yourself. All right, next topic is Batwoman star Ruby Rose exits the CW series. This is a really weird moment for CW, I think, because I think they've written themselves, they've promoted themselves into a corner of ideology versus production versus actually making money. I think this is something that is the result of failure to draw in true fans, pandering to the wrong crowd, and then not being able to deliver high quality content. And I'm going to break into this. I watched the first 5 episodes of Batwoman. It was very difficult for me to do. The reason why was because I wanted this to work really badly. Ruby Rose, I think, is a very talented actress, and I really liked her casting. I thought she was a great choice to play Batwoman. I think the best thing about the show was Ruby herself. Her in the show was redeeming at times. It was actually very good to have her in that show because most of the rest of the show was hot trash. A couple of things I think most people would not have noticed, and I think this is one of the reasons why the show is failing, but I think it's being propped up by the money coming in from like The Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, some of the other shows that are on the network. I think that it's being propped up, and this is the project they're hoping will take off, but has not yet. Most people haven't seen this show. And I'm serious, most people have not. I know a boatload of nerds from all over the world, all over the United States, all over the interweb. Very few people are watching this, and I'm not trying to put this show down. I'm trying to rationalize what is taking place right now. I think Ruby Rose probably did not get along with certain people on the project. I don't have anything that would suggest that. I'm just thinking that if the show is continuing for season 2, either they were going to cut her pay, or she just didn't like the experience, and maybe she was, some people were saying she was getting a lot of hate online. I didn't see that. I didn't see hardly any hate for her online. Most people actually like her in the role. And I'm really in touch with the fan casting community. A lot of people really like her in the role. The show itself is not very good. The CGI is horrendous. You can find legit news. You can find legit nerds on YouTube with significantly better CGI and visual effects than is being put forth on this show on CW. The first few episodes especially are incredibly noticeable. When she goes to throw a batarang, you can see that it's a clear and obvious overlay. It doesn't match up with the lighting of her hand. When it sticks in a door, it's like you can tell that it's horrible. Like, and I don't mean to be critical. You guys know me. You've seen me review all kinds of stuff. I'm actually one of the most graceful. I'm not a critic. You guys know this about me. I'm not a hard critic. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be. I like to think critically, but I'm usually pretty, like I can see the bright parts of things. I can separate the bad parts of things from the good. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Is I thought Ruby Rose was the best part of this show with nothing even close. The script was very bad. The story, I thought for the most part, was very boring. It was written in a way that does not catch your attention. They gave away what could have been a very awesome plot thread at the end of the first episode. Like the whole I'm not going to say what it is in case you guys haven't seen it. I do encourage you, go check it out, see it for yourself. Be your own judge. Don't just take my word for it. If you want to know whether or not Batwoman was bad or if it was good and it deserves more seasons, watch it for yourself. I fully endorse and encourage, just watch it. I think you might be more disappointed than me. I thought the CGI was crap. There was a few really cool fight scenes that I did enjoy. I thought were fun. It's not even it claims to be a crime show, like a detective. It's not really written that way. It tries to be, but it's not. It doesn't set things up in a way that you're like, what's going to happen here? You kind of already know. It's kind of like really elementary writing, I think. And I know these are very harsh criticisms right now. I'm not trying to poop on this show, but it's getting renewed and the main actress is jumping ship. This should tell you something. I think they were going to either cut her pay, or she was realizing this is a really bad representation of my acting ability. Because she's better than this. She was in John Wick. So what the heck? Like she's in John Wick. She goes from John Wick. Now she has her own TV show, but it's like the worst show. She doesn't need that. She doesn't need to be on the worst show. If they're not going to increase the budget drastically and get people in there that really are really good at their job as writers, as creators, people that are working on the visual effects, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for her as an actress. It's not going to help her career. So I think that's probably more or less what's happening. Now, I will break into why what I'm saying I think is perfectly valid, and it's not just purely my opinion. So let me just read this really quick. This is the note from Ruby Rose. She says this, and she's very cordial about this, by the way, very cordial. They handled it really well. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Rose will step down after just one season of the CW series. She did not provide a reason for her departure. So this is very critical. She didn't provide a reason. Warner Bros. Plans to recast the role, and the show had already been renewed for a second season. So it was already renewed. Then she quit. Interesting, isn't it? Like it had already been contracted for her to come back. And then she put in her 2 weeks and was like, I'm gone, or not even 2 weeks, but in this industry, you just say like, no, thanks. So she's just gone. Batwoman is slated to return for a full season sometime in January 2021. Read her statement for yourself. I'm going to read it for you now and try to follow along. It says, Ruby says, I have made the very difficult decision not to return to Batwoman next season, Rose announced. This was not a decision I made lightly, as I have the utmost respect for the cast, crew, and everyone involved in the show, both in Vancouver and Los Angeles. I am beyond appreciative to Greg Berlanti, he's the main guy at all the DC TV shows, Sarah Schechter, and and Carolyn Dries for not only giving me this incredible opportunity, but for welcoming me into the DC universe. They have so beautifully created. Thank you, Peter Roth and Mark Pedowitz, and the team at Warner Bros. The CW, who put so much into the show and always believed in me. Thank you to everyone who made season 1 a success. I'm truly grateful. So she leaves with a ton of grace. She handles it extremely well. Although she didn't give a reason for her departure, it's clear that she decided that this was not going to work for her. I don't know if that was a pay thing. I don't know if it was she just wasn't getting along with people in the background but played it really smooth up front for the press, or if she saw, hey, this is not going to do me any favors for my career ongoing. Let's take a look at why I think this is the case. So there's an article here about the Batwoman season 1 ratings, right? And so you can see here that, for instance, we have Sunday, like these are the air dates of the different episodes. There are 20 episodes in total for season 1. And you can see right here, as far as the viewers, this is all I'm really pointing out here. 1.8 million viewers is what it premiered at. And again, remember, they came hot off of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, which was really, really good. Like, it was really cool. Almost every DC fan that watched it, and even just people that are just fans of the shows in general, was really happy with kind of the way that it came out. It's off of the tone of all the other shows. It's totally its own thing. Even though it is all of their worlds collided, it functions like its own little story bubble. They all kind of poured into and built up to that crossover. But regardless, it's a fun event for the fans at the end of the day. And I thought Ruby Rose was fantastic in it, and most people did as well, and we're really excited for the show. The show started with 1.8 million viewers. 1.86 million viewers. And then from there, it starts to drop. It goes from 1.8 close to 2 million, and then the next episode is down to 1.4. After that, it's down to 1.2, and again a little over the previous week, but 1.2 again. Then down to 1.1, then 1.09, then 1.09 again, 009, then 1.008, and then it makes a huge jump around December 9th. It says 1.704. Then, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that may have been the weekend of the crossover. Someone check that for me. I'm gonna have to double check that date. But I think there was a spike in attention at that point because people were excited for the show because it was also marketed into the crossover. They got a few episodes up, and then the crossover hit. I think this was the week of the crossover, was December 9th. 1704 gets a huge spike again, back almost to its premiere numbers, and then comes back down the next week to 0.791, which is less than it had ever been at that time. So this tells me that people were hyped for Batwoman during the crossover event. And they were watching, what they started watching, and people were like, hey, first episode, oh, that wasn't that good. They watched the next one, it's still not good. And then it just kept going. People started dropping out and out and out, but everyone came back for the crossover. They watched the crossover, and when the crossover came, she was super good. Like, she was really good in the crossover, which also makes me think this could have been a directing issue for Batwoman, because it was different directors on the crossover. But nevertheless, crossover hits, big spike in attention back to the Batwoman show. Not just for the crossover, but from the crossover. People then were like, hey, I'm going to give Batwoman another shot. They jump back in on that week, watch the CW, 1.704, and then they realized it's not that good. So then after they have their break and they come back January 19th, it dropped back down from 1.7 million people watching to 0.7 million. They dropped 1 million people at that time. 1 million viewers dropped out of 1.7 million. So that's, that's considerable. That's quite a lot. That's more than half of the people watching the show dropped out. Think about that. They lost half their viewership again in a week. So it went from close to 2, 1.8, right? So 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, stayed at 1.2 again, 1.1, close to 1.1, back down to 1, stayed right around 1. Crossover hits and they get an influx of people from the crossover, swelling it back up to almost its original premiere numbers, back up to 1.7 as opposed to the premiering 1.8. But then the next week it drops a million back to 0.7 million. You see what I'm saying? Then it continues to drop back down. 0.6, then it goes up to 0.8. It gets a little bit more attention, then stays at 0.8, then 0.7, then 0.7, then 0.7, then 0.6, then 0.6, then 0.7, then 0.7. So their average, including the times when they almost hit 2 million, their average is 0.9 million viewers. I would be very interested to see how the ratings are for Arrow right now, or for the Flash. I would really like to see those numbers. But nevertheless, you can tell that the viewership starts really dipping. Again, most shows do have a large number of people that start out at the premiere just to see if the show might be for them. And obviously there will be plenty of people that decide it's not for me. But there's also, when you consider how much of a drop there was, and that it continued to drop until it got to that 0.7, 0.6, 0.7 million. That's a lot of loss. That's a lot of loss. Almost that's half. You know what I mean? Like they dropped to half. Instead of going up in viewership, like Arrow took off. Arrow started low and just kept growing. That's why they spun a bunch of shows out of it. In this case, that's not the case. And I do think that this is one of the reasons why Ruby Rose probably was like, this is not good for my career. I need to think about what my next projects are going to be. And if I'm going to be more or less valuable to the industry, if I keep staying on this show, I think I need to make a change of course. And so I think that's probably what happened. Now, let's take a look at the reviews. So you can see here, if you simply Google Batwoman, you get here the IMDb page, the Rotten Tomatoes, and the IGN. IGN has an 8 out of 10. I don't know why it's that high. But we're going to look today at the IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So if we go over to IMDb, you can see that, let's see, it says at the top of the stars, it's got 3.5 out of 10. That is not a lot. 3.5 out of 10 with 26,000 what looks like reviews. If we continue over to Rotten Tomatoes, we have the tomato meter. It says 79% average tomato meter and 13% audience score. Most people tend to not care as much about the critics. But for those who do, I want to point something out to you. What this statistic means, for those who don't know Rotten Tomatoes, it's a thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing. They basically put the benchmark at 70% of like you liked it 70 out of 100. Upward of 70 is a thumbs up. Under 70 is a thumbs down. And if you have 10 critics and all of them say it was somewhere between 70% liked and 100% liked, they gave it somewhere between 70 and 100 likability or approval, then it gets thumbs up. It's like it just measures numbers of thumbs up and then averages that. So that's basically what we're dealing with. I want to show you, if you see the score details, it says all critics averaged, you get the 79% thumbs up. If you just show the top critics, like the best, you get 45. So if you include all critics, you get 79. When you filter for just the top critics, you get 45%. It's not a lot. And what's more important, I think, is the audience score. These are people that are watching, that are fans. These are people that are watching that are just trying to be entertained. They're not here being like, okay, yeah, well, let's let's take a look. Okay, the lighting was cool here. I really enjoy the way that they wrote the character. They had all my favorite political messages in there, so I'm going to agree with that. No, forget the critics. For a second, let's just take a look at the audience score. We're talking about 13% gave it 70 or more. It could be as low as 70% was the best reviews. Like, it doesn't mean that people gave it 100% for the thumbs up. Thumbs up could be as low, or if you want to say high, as 70. And most people didn't. Most people gave it a thumbs down, which means it could have been anywhere below 70. It could have been all 6, mostly 69, mostly 68. It doesn't mean that it was at the floor at like 1% or anything like that. But this is not a good review. This is not a good tally of reviews. So again, that's one of the reasons why I think it went down the way that it did. And so that's pretty much all I really have to say about that. I think I'm going to, I'm not currently watching the show anymore. I stopped watching at episode 5. It was boring. It was not fun to watch. It was not interesting. It was poorly edited. I think it could have been a lack of good direction. It could have been all script. It could have been all of those things. I really don't think it was the acting. I mean, there was like 1 or 2 people in the show that were not terrific, but Ruby was great, I thought, the whole time. It just, the story sucked. The script was awful. The CGI looked completely unfinished. It looked like I don't do editing, guys. It looked like I could have done that. It was not great. So I think Ruby's making the better choice for herself, for her career. Unfortunately, I'm gonna miss her. I thought she was great. I thought she was the right casting for that role. And I might even do a fan casting just for this show to try to, help it out and give it my thoughts on what I think I could be. Not that my thoughts matter, but who cares? It might be fun. And maybe you guys would want to do that too. Let me know who you want to see play Batwoman in replacing Ruby Rose, who has just stepped down from her position for the second season. The second season is still happening. So that's another thing. So I'm sorry that this was so Debbie Downer. I just wanted to give you guys the most honest review that I possibly could. Without, I'm not trying to beat anyone up. It's just, you got to tell it like it is sometimes. And so that's what it is. I hope they find someone awesome. I hope they find someone, maybe not even a big name. Maybe it is a big name, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's someone smaller that just gets the job done right and people can grab onto. And perhaps the second time around they evaluate, hey, what are our issues? What are our problems? Let's fix it. Let's tighten it up. Let's get better. And maybe they do get better. Maybe the second season turns into something awesome. I would love for that to happen. Not sure that it will. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. And finally, let's go to the next topic and the last topic of the day. Last topic of the day is The Batman. Colin Farrell teases tasty penguin aesthetic. I really am. I was intrigued by this headline. I know it's not a lot to go on, but I did want to discuss this with you because it is fun to imagine what's going to happen in this next film. But Colin Farrell gives us an interesting quote that leads to certain expectations, and I would like to discuss those with you guys. So let's go ahead and check this out. So Matt Reeves' The Batman is up there with the hottest films still set to hit theaters in the next few years. And that's not just because the cast, top to bottom, is literally extremely hot. That includes Colin Farrell, the left field choice to play Gotham City's squattest crime lord Oswald the Penguin Cobblepot. Out of anyone in the movie, I'm most intrigued about how the In Bruges actor will embody the DC Comics counterpart, and luckily Farrell is taking time out of his quarantine to offer up interesting tidbits. Speaking to GMA, Farrell offered a tasty tease of his Cobblepot's aesthetic while he reveals his character is not all over the story. Or not all over the story. He says, I had only started it back. I had only started it, and I can't wait to get back. The creation of it, the aesthetic of the character has been fun, and I really am excited to get back and explore it. I haven't got that much to do. I have a certain amount in the film. I am not all over it by any means, but there are a couple of some tasty scenes I have in it and my creation, and I can't wait to get back. Yeah, I totally feel like it's something that I have not had the opportunity to explore before. It feels original and fun, but I am only at the start of the journey, and so I can't wait to get back and really get into it. And so then it continues on. The article continues on and says, oh wait, hang on. It says Farrell has also discussed his history with the Caped Crusader, which stems all the way back to the TV series starring Adam West. Which is ironic because you also see Adam West design merged into the design of the mask of this new mask and cowl. I'll talk about that in a sec too. It says, it's all exciting to be a part of that universe, and just there are so many words, or there are certain words that are a part of my internal lexicon. Gotham City, Penguin, Joker, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Harvey Dent, all these things. Tim Burton's Batman was kind of my... No. I watched the Adam West TV show growing up actually as well. So Batman as a kid, yes, very much. Not in the comic book form, but the TV show I watched ardently when I was a child. And then in my teens, I saw Burton's version, and I loved it. Then I obviously was a huge fan of what Chris Nolan did with that world and how he brought it back to life and gave it an immediacy and a contemporary significance. So just to be part of, again, that folklore, that mythology is, again, really cool. So it's nice to see that we have people that are fans of these characters, people that know what the characters were, what they have been, and what they kind of want to do with them. That's exciting to me. I like to see nerds get on nerd projects because that to me is like, it's almost like living vicariously through them. You get to be like, this person loves the character, maybe close to as much as I do, maybe more. And they are getting to portray this character. It's nice to see that iteration come to life. Very fun. It sucks whenever you have an actor play a role that you like, and then they come out and speak out against it. It's kind of like Harrison Ford being like, yeah, they need to kill Han Solo. And you're just like, you're deeply offended as a Star Wars fan. You're like, geez, man, like, calm down. Like, couldn't you just be a little excited? You know, he gave you your career. So that's kind of like what that is. But the opposite, because Colin Farrell is excited. He's like, hey, you know what? You know, might not be the most articulate speaker in the world, myself and him included. But also, he's just like, you know what? I like Tim Burton. Adam West was my guy. I grew up on that. Watching that all the time as a kid was formative for me. And then, of course, loved Tim Burton's take. And then also what Christopher Nolan did. Like, he's speaking all the right tunes. Most everybody loves Christian Bale's iteration. And even those who don't, even them, they love, for instance, the Michael Keaton version. Most everybody loves that version. And then again, oh, and also, you know, a lot of people like the Val Kilmer one too. And then also Adam West. Big fan of Adam West. And what's cool is that in the spirit of telling a tale in an older fashion, like Matt Reeves has kind of alluded to doing, they took the idea of that leather mask with the stitching from the Adam West saga. That's kind of what that was. And so they're doing that again here, visually, adding some similar styling, some similar aesthetic to that older take, makes me think that they might actually do that similar older take on the Penguin. Just a guy that has delusions of grandeur and wants to be bigger in the crime syndicates than perhaps he already is, wants to take over Gotham, has an obsession or rather an artistic obsession with perhaps birds, avian creatures, has his own aviary, but isn't necessarily like a penguin. He just has a suit. It could be like that. It could be similar to how they've done it in the past. So I wanted to go ahead and show you guys. Now, this is the casting for the Batman. Of course, you guys have probably already seen this, maybe not, but there's a lot of villains here. So you see Selena Kyle as Catwoman. Even though she's been like good and bad, she's going to probably be also very bad. You see Oswald Cobblepot, of course, the Penguin. District Attorney Gil Colson. Interesting. I'm not familiar with the name Gil Colson. I think this may end up becoming a Harvey Dent style character, if not Harvey himself. Maybe it's not. Maybe someone else will play him. But we also have the Riddler, Edward Nashton instead of Edward Nygma. We have Carmine Falcone, crime lord. Plenty of other special agents. Another commissioner. Police chief. You know, there's plenty of other people that are going to be in this movie. And I think this is going to, this is going to play out like a detective film. Like Matt Reeves has basically said, the element of Batman he wants to focus on is one that he hasn't seen in live action depictions in a film yet. It is the detective aspect of Batman that drew him to the character in the comics. And he wants to iterate that now with Robert Pattinson's version. Now, many of you guys probably already heard, and I haven't made this video yet. I want to. I'll make a separate video for this. I won't. This won't be the end of this conversation because I want to make a dedicated video to this exact topic. But when Robert Pattinson basically said that if you're an actor that works out for a role, you're part of the problem, and he then goes on to call out even Zoe Kravitz, a co-star in this film who's playing Catwoman, for working out, it makes him look like a douche. It makes him look like a total tool, a lazy, spoiled brat. It makes him seem completely unlikable. Completely. Like, dude, you couldn't give like 5 ounces of effort for this film. You're playing the most iconic character ever next to Spider-Man, next to Superman. Like, this is it. It's Batman. You couldn't work out a little. He basically just said he stopped working out. He doesn't care. And so, but I do think that to play the devil's advocate and to play the other side of that, the Batman he's playing is a cerebral Batman. The Batman he's playing is not the world's greatest fighter. He's going to be competent, of course. He will be portrayed as competent, I'm sure. But he's going to be a detective first. He's going to be a strategist first. And that is, it's going to involve a Batman of the mind. It's going to be involving the brain that is the Batman, which is not someone we've seen so far. We've seen the moralist in Christian Bale. We've seen a very dark, brooding, brutal, spawned creature of the darkness of Gotham City in Ben Affleck. We have seen the brutal 1980s depiction in Michael Keaton. We have seen the mentor figure, which was George Clooney. We have seen, for instance, Adam West being the bright knight, the good, the family-friendly, wholehearted, wholesome Batman. We have seen all of these different iterations of Batman. Val Kilmer being the ladies' man. He was the romantic. He's the lover, Bruce Wayne. That it's different for every iteration. The iterations we have not seen yet, I think there's 2 major ones, is the detective, the world's greatest strategist and the world's greatest detective, and then also the fighter. We haven't seen the world's best fighter, or rather one of the DC Universe's greatest fighting champions and the champion of Gotham City. We haven't seen those 2. I would personally like to see Scott Adkins play the fighter, but we are going to get the detective in Robert Pattinson. So whether or not that's, you like that, you don't like that, I think they're going in a good direction because he plays a cerebral actor or character in most of his stuff. That being said, so I'll make a different video talking about the pros and cons of that, what I think about all that crap. In this situation, what was said by Colin Farrell, who is obviously being a much better sport about his role than Robert Pattinson is about his. But he says here, in the first quote here, he says he hasn't gotten to do much, and I have a certain amount in the film. I'm not all over it by any means. This quote right here is saying that he is a piece of this puzzle. And I think that as a detective story, like Matt Reeves has alluded to and told the world that he wants to focus on the detective element of Batman, I think this film is going to play out kind of like a Sherlock Holmes film, where we, the viewers, do not know who committed the crime that will probably start in the beginning or the middle of the film. Batman is going to have to solve it, and we're going to go along with him like Sherlock Holmes and watch him figure it out. It's going to play out like a whodunit. I don't know if you guys saw Knives Out. It's going to probably be like that, where you have the Riddler, you have Carmine Falcone, you have the Penguin, you have Catwoman, you have different cops and Gotham City DAs, and you have other players that are all part of this weird orchestration called Gotham City, and there's a crime that gets committed, and Batman has to solve the riddle. He has to solve what happened, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see this depiction of Colin Farrell. Now, this is not a picture of Colin Farrell as the Penguin, but I do think that this is probably going to be similar to how they're going to play him right there. So you see how he's got, he's got the vest, he's got the long sleeve white shirt underneath, he's got, the lapel comes out this way. That image does make him look a little bit closer to like a classical style of Penguin. So I'm going to show you guys something. This is a list by Screen Rant called Every Adaptation of the Penguin Ranked from Worst to Best. Obviously, they're going to do a new one when Colin Farrell's comes out. But this here, I think, is going to be a really fun way to show you guys kind of more or less what I'm thinking. So throughout the years, Penguin has been depicted a number of times. He's been depicted in DC Universe Online as the short, kind of claw-handed, long beak-style nose version of Penguin that definitely looks Penguin-like. That's a very comic book version of Penguin. But we also have different animated series versions of Penguin where he was a shorter guy, but he was a fairly normal guy, maybe a little bit chubby with a big long nose. Dresses in a suit more often than not, but he was a regular guy. He wasn't designed to look like a penguin, just have the suit, and he was a criminal, obviously, uses his umbrella as he always does. But it was kind of more or less a play on the penguin suit, not necessarily making the person like a penguin with the weird claw hands and like a beak. Instead he just has kind of a long pointy nose, which is, fairly normal for the character. So the new Scooby-Doo movies by Ted Knight, and this version as well, The New Adventures of Batman, play out very similarly. And again, Batman the Brave and the Bold went for that direction a little bit as well. But clearly more sinister than some of the others. The Brave and the Bold did get kind of, even though it's a kid's show, a little bit more dark, which is fun. It's actually a really great show I like. Batman Unlimited. Dana Snyder played this one. Very creepy old guy. Again, they did the like claw hands type of thing. Not every version has that. Actually, in fact, I would say most of the versions don't have that. But this one goes for like quite an older gentleman, very Rothschild-esque, like the wealthiest of the wealthy, very sociopathic. That's kind of more or less where they're going with this. And I don't think this is where they're going to go with Colin Farrell. The Lego series, obviously, with Tom Kenny is its own version, but Tom Kenny does play another version as well, so I'll show you that one too. This one, the Superpower Team Galactic Guardians with Robert Morse. Very similar to the Adam West version. And I do think that it may be a little closer to this, where they go. And I do think it's because a lot of Adam West's influence is being cast into this new film through aesthetic style. So they may choose to do that as well with someone like Colin Farrell, who's not a short guy. I mean, he's not the tallest guy ever, but he's fairly normal height. And he's actually kind of a good-looking dude. They may choose to keep his body style normal, just keep him in the suit, make him obsessed with, wealth and riches, and make him delusions of grandeur, seeing himself over and bigger than the rest of Gotham City, but also wants to be loved and adored by all of Gotham City as well. So I think that could be kind of where they're going with this. There is the Batman Telltale series version, which is very, very different. Not at all the same. Basically, they played Oswald Cobblepot as the same age as Batman. Bruce Wayne made him grow up with Bruce Wayne. They were friends for a long time. Bruce Wayne calls him Oz. And in this situation, he's like a gunman. And he just puts on this crazy penguin-esque mask. Very, very different take. Not horrible, but almost unrecognizable. Really weird take, but I thought it was fresh. It's fun. And then I still prefer the classic. But then you have this one. This is more or less what I think they're going to do here. The new Batman Adventures, Paul H. Williams. I think they're going to do kind of like this, because he does look like a fairly normal, not hideous guy with all of his fingers, a monocle, very wealthy, hires thugs, is influential in the crime syndicates. I do think that this is probably more or less where they're going to go with this one, because it'll also make him seem less suspect if we're doing a murder mystery crime thriller story for Batman. So as the viewer, you will see Oswald Cobblepot. He may behave a little rough around the edges. He may eat like raw fish or something weird. Not like sushi, but like a live fish. They may show him doing that, where I think that might be the case because it implies tasty, and that's what was quoted by Colin Farrell. But also taste. He's classy. He's of the upper class, upper echelon. He puts himself above the people, but also demands their affection and respect, while also committing crimes. So I think it could be that. Also, the Batman with Tom Kenny. This is the direction I think they are not going to go, where he's a full-on menacing creep. I don't think they're going to go that direction. I think it'll be a little more subtle than that. This, by the way, was Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob. And then this this is, I think, maybe a close cousin to where they're going to go with this, the new Batman Adventures. I think it'll be a classier version of this, because this version, Robin Lord Taylor from Gotham, he was really good, but he full on went totally into the greasy, the greasy, like, spawn of the mafia, cold-blooded murderer, you know, like, kills you with his knife. I think the one that they're going to do with Colin Farrell is going to be a little bit more posh than this, but also tip his hand as a cold-blooded killer at times, behaviorally, and then you'll probably get that reveal by the end. But it'll be similar to this, where it's a normal dude. He doesn't have like the weird claw hands. It'll be a normal guy, I think, and I could be very wrong about that. This is another version that has come up. Just given the fact that they cast Colin Farrell for this, I don't think this is where they'll go. They might put him in a fat suit and have him hunch over and make his hands all weird and, like, you know, Tim Burton-esque. I don't know that they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that. But again, this could be the case. So this was Paul H. Williams. Danny DeVito's version, I think this is going to be the opposite of what they're going to do. I think they're going to actually make Penguin look like a stand-up guy, fairly normal, but with some weird, odd habits and tendencies, and a weird disassociation from common people and sympathy from common people. This version was over the top crazy. It's Tim Burton. It's Tim Burton's version. Danny DeVito did an amazing job in this role. I really do like that movie a lot, and I like it also because of Danny DeVito and how weird he made that movie. But it's great. Probably one of the best villain performances. It's very underrated, honestly. It's cheesy, got some cheesy lines out there, but it's also, you know, it's Tim Burton. So if you can get that style, the performance was really good. I think it's not going to be like this. I think it's going to try to make itself a cleaner representation of a rich and powerful elite socialite that has gained control over some thugs and, you know, and that kind of thing. So creates his own crime syndicate. A little bit different. This one, the Arkham series with Nolan North. Other than the actual, like, balding of the head, I do think that this is going to be closest to what they're going to do. But either way, you know, you get the gist. And this, obviously, Batman 1966 with Burgess Meredith. This version I like a lot. This one was super crazy because he had that giant, like the old timey, like, cigarette or whatever it is. He's like, rah, 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 and he, like, rock back and forth when he's laughing and stuff. Just a really, really funny version of that classy elite, you know, socialite with lots of money, lots of power, and then is basically only a penguin because of his slightly longer nose, bigger nose, and then the suit, you know, and then kind of a honky laugh, I guess. I think that it'll be a mixture between this, Batman 1966 from Adam West, again, where a lot of inspiration has been drawn in the styling of Robert Pattinson's suit, And the new Batman Adventures. I think that's what we're going to get. A hybrid of new Batman Adventures and Burgess Meredith's the Penguin. So that's kind of what I think is happening. And again, the word tasty could imply to a meal that he has in this thing. Maybe he's met by Bruce Wayne at a dinner function where you get to see his odd eating habits. He's only eating like fish and things like that. Which nowadays isn't even that odd. But they could play it in a weird way where he's like crunching the bones. That could be weird. So yeah. Anyway, that's more or less what I think. Harkening back to the show 1960s Batman, the idea was that there were round tables of villains. There was a plethora of villains at play. And that's kind of, again, where we're drawing inspiration from with the idea of having plenty of villains planted all throughout the film and it being a detective story. So I do think that this is probably closer to where we're going to get it. A combination of Burgess Meredith and the new Batman Adventure series. And Colin Farrell will probably just adapt his look to look closer to this version more so than like the purple suit that Burgess Meredith had. So anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on that. What do you guys think about Colin Farrell's comments on what's going on? His limited part, or his part sort of throughout the film, not all throughout, but just a couple places. Do you think this lends itself to the idea that it's going to be like a whodunit type of detective story? Are we going to know from the beginning and Batman doesn't know and he just has to figure it out and we're just watching him get there? To me, that sounds more boring, but you guys might like that. I'm going to let you guys stew on that for a bit, and I am going to switch my screen and take your guys' questions now. So without further ado, let me go ahead and switch to this screen here. All right, let's take the comments from Daniel's Hot Topics. Daniel's Hot Topics, what's up, my dude? He says, hello, Daniel, what up? What is up? Did you hear that Sony announced a Madam Web movie? Yes, I did. So I think I may have talked about that in one or two videos at this point. I'll make another video on the topic as soon as more info comes out. It probably has. But they announced that a little while ago. And that was, I think that was actually during the time that was during the time that Tom Holland was in limbo and like Sony had pulled out of the MCU and the MCU was like, no, we're not going to share, we want all the rights and you can't hold that back from us. And then Sony was like, screw you, we don't need you. And then they eventually like did some backdoor meetings and came to a conclusion that, hey, we can work together on this. So then Tom Holland's back in the MCU and more movies are confirmed. During that time of like what's going on, they announced that Madam Web thing, which can only mean one thing. Spider-Verse. That's it. There's nothing else that could mean. It's not going to be a standalone hero where she's her own person. I know they've written a story where they build up to Madam Web becoming Madam Web. I get that. The whole point of it, the whole point of Madam Web, her powers, her calling, her destiny, the whole thing is about destiny, but it's about the multiverse of Spider-Man. It's the Spider-Verse. It always has been, and it always will be. And the point was, Sony was saying, listen, Marvel, we don't need you. We can make as many movies as we want. We can have our own universe, and we will. You get to either be a part of it, or you can back the heck off. And we'll get all of our characters and take them back to our house and play with our own toys. So Marvel was like, no, please, like take us back. We need Spider-Man really badly because all we have is Captain Marvel. So like they were really eager to put it back together. They pulled out because they thought Sony was going to cower back, and Sony said, screw you, we've got Madam Web, we can do our own multiverse, and everyone loves Venom, so tough noogies, we're going to make our own Spider-Verse. And they have Tom Holland. So now that it's all back together, they never said they were going to stop making the Madam Web movie, but why would they need to? It just opens up more possibilities for multiverse. So they can have they could do Ben Reilly, they could do Spider-Man 2099 in live action, they could have Mexican Spider-Man, they could have Miles Morales, Latino and Black Spider-Man, they could have Silk, which is Asian, they could have Spider-Gwen, which is white female, they could have 17 versions of Peter Parker if they wanted, they could have all of these different things. they could make a Spider-Man movie for every demographic under the sun with comic book precedent and all have it connected. That's the crazy thing. They really don't need Marvel. Marvel needed Sony. And so yeah, there's no way they're going to back off on the Madam Web movie. It could only be a good thing for Sony to open up the multiverse, cuz if they make a movie on its own and it tanks, it was in a different universe. That's all they have to do. You know, it's like they could be like, that was its own thing. You know, like it's amazing to me why they may not have thought of this sooner. Obviously, it was because they were playing nice and they were playing in the same sandbox as Marvel until Marvel was like, give us all your toys, because screw you. So, and you guys know me. I'm a Marvel fan through and through, but what they did to Sony was shady. Shady as heck. And I'm proud of Sony for standing their ground. Obviously, they came to a reasonable compromise. But I'm really excited for that Madam Web movie. I hope it's not about her origins, honestly. I hope it's actually about Spider-Man. And that's a weird thing to say because it's a Madam Web movie. I hope they kind of tell her origin a little. But growing up watching the Spider-Man TV series, which is where I was introduced to Madam Web in the 90s, they didn't give you a lot of backstory on Madam Web. It was about Spider-Man. He gets randomly called by Destiny herself, Madam Web, to save the multiverse from a madman. And that's what happened. So it's, you know, you just go along with Spider-Man. They could even start it with they could start it with Ben Reilly and have Ben Reilly be the called and then comes over and meets, for instance, Tom Holland. You know what would be crazy is if they had Harry Osterfield, the best friend of Tom Holland, if they had him play Ben Reilly, if they did his hair like orange or something, so he's like a redhead, they could do Ben Reilly redhead, you know, that, or I think he's like strawberry blonde. I was always confused about whether or not he was slightly redhead or if he was blonde with a weird color. You know what I mean? Like, because with comic art, it can sometimes be hard to tell. And in the TV show, I thought he looked like a redhead at some times, but sometimes other than that, he looked blonde. So it's like, is this just artistic ambiguity, or is it like, is this just me? So anyways, I've always seen him as like a redhead, but whatever, doesn't matter to me. Although there's a drastic lack of redheads being represented in comic book movies now. They all get, and I've talked about this multiple times in my hashtag, in the hashtag not my Ariel video that I made, defending Ariel and defending the other argument as well, showing both sides of the reasoning. I said that basically every redhead in superheroes right now is pretty much being replaced and race bent to be African American. Almost every single one. And I made a list about that. You guys can go watch that video if you like. I'm not going to cover it here because it's going to take too long. I need to wrap this up. But regardless, yeah, so Madam Web, I'm excited. Let's get it done. Open the multiverse in the MCU, open the multiverse in the Sonyverse, and go nuts. Let's just get some stories told. So with Daniel's Hot Topics, he says, I won't even watch Batwoman. The show is just another street level show. It's less than a street level show. It is like really bad. Like, I would encourage anyone who wants to make any kind of critical assessment of the show, anyone who has anything negative to say but hasn't seen an episode of the show, go watch one episode of the show. You'll have all the ammunition you need. If you want to criticize it, I think it's fair to, you know, at least open that up and take a look. Perhaps you can do it on the CW app if you'd like. It's free. But it's not a good show. That is my opinion. It's also, my opinion is corroborated by the actual critical reviews and by the audience scores. And if you watch the audience from the premiere date all the way through to the end of the first season, and the fact that Ruby Rose left the show, which could be, it could be a number of reasons why she left the show. It really could. It could be anything. It could have been so much drama that we would be losing our minds. But she just kept it quiet. We don't know. We really don't. I think it's because the show sucked. And I think she knew that, and I think she knew she's better than that. She deserves better roles than what she's getting on CW. It's hot trash, in my opinion. And it's not because she's a woman. It's not because she's gay. It's not because of any of that. It's because the show sucks. Arrow started really well. I think it started to suck in the later seasons. You know, it's just because sometimes the writing works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the actors are great on screen, sometimes they're not. Sometimes you connect with the characters, sometimes you don't. It's, you know, it just is what it is. Some shows are great throughout the entire series. Lex Luthor throughout Smallville was always great. 100% of the time. He was always fascinating to watch, enjoyable. You connect, you can be like, what the heck? What's going on? This character is not that. And it wasn't Ruby's fault, I don't think. It could have been, but I don't think. In my assessment, it wasn't the acting. It was literally everything else in that show. Not a good show. Anyway, that's the last I'll say on that. But it says here, Daniel's Hot Topic says, I like sci-fi shows like Smallville, Flash, Legends, and The Mandalorian. The only reason why I will get the first season of Batwoman will be for the second episode of Crisis. I started by watching the Crisis and I was like, hey, she's actually pretty good. I'll watch the show. And that's what happened to me. I watched the crossover and she was good. I watched the show and it just kept going down. It was not good. So that's pretty much all I'll say about that. Enough there. But yeah, I love The Flash, Smallville, love it. I'm not currently watching The Flash. I think too that show also started to dip because it was like, it's all about Team Flash. No, it's not. It's not about Team Flash. Team Flash should have just been Caitlin and Cisco and Wells until Wells was gone. But Caitlin and Cisco was all you needed. Just keep it small, keep it simple, and keep it about Barry. For goodness sakes, we don't care about Iris. We don't care about all of these extra characters that just keep coming in. It's all about like having our own little Avengers. It's not. Iris was a journalist. She's supposed to be his love interest. She's not the leader of Team Flash. She's not as... This was what killed it for me, was when Barry was like, you're just as much the Flash as I am. I was like, absolutely not. 100% no. The Iris West in the comics was his reason to fight. It's like if a guy goes off to war, right? Like you talk about a World War II film, you get the draft, man goes off to fight for the freedoms and protect our rights in our land and our country and our homes and our people. The family stays at home. They're in spirit. They're his motivation. They're the reason he wants to make the world a better place so that his family can have a better world to live in. That they're his heart. They're his motivation. They're not out there training, working, starving. They're not out there getting shot. He is the hero. They are the family members of the hero who make the sacrifice of letting him go to war. You know what I mean? It's different. You're not the Flash. You're simply not, Iris. You're not the Flash. That was what did it for me. And it's like, I like the actress that played her. But again, that's another redhead from the comics that got turned, that got race bent. Again, not a big deal. I never really cared for Iris in the first place. The show was like the first place where I even remembered her name. So it's not a big deal in that situation. I would say Mary Jane Watson needs to be a redhead. I would say Mira from Aquaman, thank God they kept her redhead and the way that she is. There's so much push to change not just characters, not just regular characters. It's almost always redheads. Why is it always the redheads? You know what I'm saying? Like Hawk Girl was a redhead. They made on CW, she's now not, she's not a redhead. What's up with they did it with Wally West, which again, they already did Iris, so like making Wally, there was comic book precedent there. But again, even in the comics, why the redhead? Why was it redhead Wally West changed to race bend? Like that's the question. So and again, you guys know my stance on this. I'm classic originalist. I'm very like nostalgic oriented. So like for me, the way that it was when I grew up is the way that I like it. That's usually the case. Not always, but usually. I actually really like what's his name? Keenan I can't remember his last name, but the guy that plays Wally on CW. I really like him. I think he was one of the most enjoyable parts of The Flash to me was when he became Wally. Loved his character. I love the way he plays him. He's fun. He's upbeat. And you could feel that he genuinely wanted to learn and be the Flash when he was trying to do that in the show. His acting was good, and I love that. So he was one of the better solid parts for that show for me. But again, it just begs the question, why all the redheads? You know what I mean? Does someone in CW or like just in DC in general hate redheads? Like, or even in Marvel, it happens in Marvel too. Redheads getting turned into, you know, race bent characters. Really weird. But anyway, that's like, you know, that's where you start to get into like theory territories. Like, do people hate redheads? Like people in creative positions, I mean. So that's like a question for you. Let me know if you guys feel like that's happening right now. I'll create a comprehensive list for you, and then we'll run through that, and then I'll just make that the question of the day or something. So then, okay. Oh, and I think this one on my YouTube is saying, okay, I lost my place for a second, but I found it. It says, Daniel's Hot Topic says, I loved Ming-Na Wen when she was doing martial arts. The fighting, the shouting, or Kia, that spirited shout. Yeah, Kia! You know, that whole thing they do in martial arts. It was all pretty sexy when she did that. Oh, wait, I missed one from you. Sorry. So let me start from the first one. It says, Daniel's Hot Topic says, was watching The Mandalorian episode 5, the episode with Fennec Shand, played by Ming-Na Wen. I love that fight between the bounty hunter guy and Fennec when she kicked his A. It was funny. And then loved Ming-Na Wen when she was doing martial arts. The fighting and the shouting and the kia, the spirited shout they do with the martial arts. It was all pretty sensual when she did that. I don't personally, I never considered her like personally attractive. I just thought she was a great actress, and I love actors that are totally into martial arts. I don't know if you know, but she was Mulan. She was Mulan. She was the voice of Mulan. She's a savage. I love her in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think she's a great actor. I think she was perfect for the role of Fennec Shand. Again, The Mandalorian doesn't take a lot of chances with their casting. They play people to their exact strengths. And I think they did that very, very well with casting Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand. So to me, I agree. I thought it was really cool. It was not a lot of fighting that happened, but what did happen, I was like, yeah, that's great. It worked perfectly well for me. I hope she's not dead. I hope she does get to come back, because I would like to see a resurgence of, for instance, Bill Burr's character and the entire crew that was in episode 6, The Jailbreak, join up with Fennec Shand and a bunch of other bounty hunters for like some giant either siege or getting back at the Empire or something like that. That'd be really cool. I love Bill Burr, so I'd love to see him come back. And Ming-Na Wen, of course. I hope she's not dead. I hope her body was just unconscious or wounded severely. I hope she's not completely dead. It did look like she died, but we don't know. So then after that, we had Daniel's Hot Topic says, I think they are doing Madam Web movie because Marvel is doing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So Sony is competing with Marvel, and they want to do a multiverse movie themselves. That is very probable, but it's also, I think it's more than just competition, because they are also working in tandem. Like I mentioned before, it was announced during the dispute between Marvel and Sony that Sony was going to do a multiverse film as well, being Madam Web. Regardless, I think they were planning to do that anyway. Madam Web was something that, you know, like Amy Pascal, even though she's not in charge of Sony anymore, when she was in charge of Sony and they did that interview with Kevin Feige, she was talking about, yes, they're going to cross over. We've got plans. It's going to happen. And Kevin Feige is there sitting like nervously, like, someone cut the camera. She said something she shouldn't. Multiverse was always on the table. They wanted to wait till they got past Endgame, because obviously that was going to involve separating time streams and things like that. But yeah, they like it could very, very well be competition. And I think there is that involved. But I think the main driver was just that they have so many stories they can and will tell that having an established multiverse doesn't mean you have to use it, but it means you have the ability to use it. And that's very liberating for Sony. Plus, it allows them to make excuses for like crossing over films. So now that there's a multiverse in the MCU and a multiverse in the Sonyverse, even though they are technically crossing over already with Tom Holland in Far From Home and Homecoming, it's already linked. We know that from the Morbius trailer. I already broke that down. I'll talk to you guys about that later. But you can go anywhere you want now. So like if they want to do a crossover again, it could happen anywhere. In an alternate universe from the MCU, and also an alternate universe from the Sonyverse, it could happen in one of these linked up universes. It's a liberating story plot device. You know what I'm saying? So yes, it very well probably started with an air of like, this is our backup plan in case Marvel screws us. But it also works as a leveraging point so that they can work with Marvel more as well, I'm sure. And anyone else they want, honestly, if they wanted to do a crossover with Hellboy, they might be able to arrange that. Like, think about that. Like, they could do anything they wanted because it could be a special standalone thing with the characters we know from the MCU and from the Sonyverse. Like, that's bonkers to think about. Like, it's like an episode of Scooby-Doo when they cross over with Batman. It doesn't mean they're in the same world, but for that episode, they are in the same world. You know what I mean? So, like, it's limitless. It's liberating. So they can do whatever they want. And I like that. I really do. All right. So then next we have, so is Sony doing movies in the MCU or their Sonyverse? If they are doing movies in the Sonyverse, that means it's not canon to the MCU, which is a shame. I think they're going to, I think that it is definitely going to be part of the MCU for the Tom Holland stuff. Morbius and Venom, I think that was part of the stipulation. Like, you want Tom Holland? We're going full MCU. Because after he came back and they dropped that Morbius trailer, we saw evidence of, and I broke this down, without a doubt, we know that Michael Keaton is the Michael Keaton from the MCU. Tom Holland's films, Homecoming and Far From Home, both take place inside of the MCU, but they are 100% Sonyverse films. And they're not going to be separate from Venom. Morbius has been verified since day one that it is going to be inside of the Venomverse, which is now the Sonyverse. It's just terminology. That's all we're calling it. It was the Venomverse, but they renamed that. It's the same thing. It's the Sonyverse. But we know that the Morbius trailer, being in the same universe as Venom, has now confirmed that it is in the Tom Holland MCU verse. And then also, Venom 2 is now adjusting their marketing to reflect the fact that it's in the MCU as well, with Spider-Man. Big things happening. Big things. But I do think that it is now taking place inside the MCU, and that was probably, very, very likely, one of the definitive, requirements from Sony when they bargained back to get Tom Holland in the MCU, because Kevin Feige was the one that ended up coming back. I think, or it was Bob Iger, because Tom Holland got drunk and then talked to Bob Iger on the phone crying and was like, please, I want to go back to the MCU. Fans want it. I want it. Let's just make it happen. Bob Iger was like, okay, fine. So let's make it happen. Calls up the heads over at Sony and was like, look, we really do need this. Sorry we had to try to play ball the way we did, I guess. I might not even have said that. But basically just, let's make a deal. And Sony was like, you want a deal? This is what's happening. Morbius, we're dropping this trailer, and guess who's going to be in it? Your Vulture, Michael Keaton. From our films, from the Sonyverse films, this MCU is crossing into our Sonyverse, and it's going to be probably one and the same. We're still calling it the Sonyverse, because there's room for things that are to be created by Sony that don't necessarily have to involve themselves in MCU-specific films, but the continuity is going to remain, I think. I think that's probably part of the stipulation. And that's probably why they're also okay to move forward with a multiverse film of their own, Madam Web, so that they could plant characters in films like what's his name, what's his name, Night Thrasher or something, like I don't remember what the name of the character is. There's a few characters that are like their own like anti-hero heroes in the Sony canon of characters that they're going to make films for. They could drop that in a Madam Web alternate universe so that it's Sonyverse, but it's separate from the MCU Sonyverse. You know what I'm saying? Because Tom Holland is Sonyverse and is canon in the MCU. Same with now Morbius and Venom. And what's going to happen, very likely, is that characters that the Marvel Universe does not want will probably take place in alternate universes for Madam Web, where Tom Holland has to go through Madam Web to get to these other problems. You know what I'm saying? It could get convoluted, could get weird, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay to like let it just play out. People are smart enough. I mean, there's a lot of casual fans that are just going to watch and not care one iota about tracking the universes. There's going to be a lot of people that try to track it and might get confused, but I think the vast majority of nerds like you and me are going to be just fine. If we see a character that was from the MCU in this, we're like, okay, same universe, like we get it. It's not that hard. So, and for those who have a hard time with it, they've got people like us. So that's what's going to happen. So then in this, it says, so you're going to watch season 7 of S.H.I.E.L.D. I stopped watching S.H.I.E.L.D. because it looked like it takes place in another Marvel timeline and not the main MCU. You know, it sucks to say because that's kind of exactly what happened. It started out being like, yes, this is a show that kind of takes place in the MCU. It is 100% in the MCU, and we're going to reference things in the MCU. Marvel, the films, do not reference downstream to the TV shows. It does not happen until now when the films are going to be made by Marvel Studios instead of Marvel TV. Marvel TV is basically done. I think they actually just abolished that. I think there's, other than this last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think there's nothing left. Everything over there is pretty much done, and they're planning to do away with it so that everything can fall under the Marvel Studios banner, controlled by Kevin Feige, other than other entities. I do think I will watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think I'll be following episode for episode. I'll probably like wait until a couple of episodes, then watch a few of them. My wife does like that show as well, so we might watch that week to week. It just depends. I haven't even seen the trailer for it, honestly. Like, I've been kind of behind on that. I had a little bit lower of an interest for that, unfortunately. I just got really busy, distracted. There's been a lot going on too, in the world in general. So yeah, I'll probably get on season 7. I don't think I'll be tracking it on time. But I'll let you know, because I do enjoy the show. How many seasons of Loki do you think they may do? I hear it is a mini series for now, but then I read that they renewed it for season 2. I hope so. If S.H.I.E.L.D. can have 7 seasons, Loki, a fan favorite, can. I think I'm a little skeptical because I think that Loki is not going to be adult Loki. I think it's going to start out for the most part with Tom Hiddleston, and then it's going to transition into either Icole or just Kid Loki. I think it's going to be a bridge into what's it called? Yeah, the Young Avengers. I think it's going to be a bridge into the Young Avengers, and that it's actually going to wind up phasing out Tom Hiddleston's Loki, at least during the TV setting, and then just introducing a younger actor that's going to play kid version of him, who is actually a struggling good guy, based on what they've done in the comics to build up the Young Avengers. Because that's where that, by the way, if you guys didn't know, that's exactly where this is going. All of these Disney Plus TV series, all of them are setting up Young Avengers. Every single one is directly linked to a Young Avengers character in multiple ways. If not one, multiple. Hawkeye is about Kate Bishop. WandaVision is about the twins. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to introduce Isaiah Bradley, or is it Isaiah? Elijah Bradley. It might be Elijah Bradley. It's the grandson, not the grandfather, but the grandson. The younger one becomes Patriot. He is also a Young Avenger. That's going to branch directly out of that show. And then also, what's the other one? Loki is also a key proponent of that. They've already introduced Cassie Lang in Endgame, so we already have her. She's already a teenager. That's already set up. And who else am I missing? I know there's a few others that. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure Captain Marvel 2 is going to introduce Hulkling, who's half Kree, and half Skrull. That's something I think is going to happen in Captain Marvel 2. And I think, I don't know which show or which movie or whatever is going to do this part, but it could be Ant-Man 2 or Ant-Man 3. But I think that Kang the Conqueror and Iron Lad are going to be introduced at some point. I think that might happen in Ant-Man 3. I could be wrong. I don't know. There's a lot of proposed theories about Ant-Man 3, including the Fantastic Four and a few other things. But yeah, so that's kind of more or less where that is. So let's go ahead and take the last comment. This has gone on for quite some time. This is almost a 2-hour video right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this up. So it says here, Daniel's Hot Topic says again, but what happened if Sony and Disney have a falling out and Sony leaves and does their Sonyverse solo? What does that mean for their canon? Their canon will be completely unfettered, undamaged, because all it means is they have to go off of the previous films they already had canonized. We know that Iron Man was canonized into Sonyverse canon because they won't be able to use Iron Man anymore, but the past still remains. The history still remains. And so you just won't see, if that happens and there is another split of Sony and Marvel, Tom Holland will go back with Sony. We'll still have Morbius. We'll still have Venom. You're going to have Black Cat. You're going to have Silver Sable. Tons of villains. You're going to have every villain that was in Homecoming, every villain that was in Far From Home. I think that's close to like 16 actual and hinted at and Easter egged villains scattered throughout those 2 films. All of them at your disposal, and so many more. 900 characters from Sony that they have at their disposal from Marvel that they legally can use. They're going to do it. And so whether or not that means that we'll get to see Spider-Man in the future, which won't be the case if Sony goes home without Marvel, it won't really hurt. It's not going to hurt Sony, I'll tell you that. The split between Sony and Marvel will only hurt Marvel. Sony will actually be so much better off on their own than they will be in the MCU. Because, for instance, one of the main criticisms of Tom Holland's Spider-Man films is that he's Iron Man Jr. People don't like that because it takes away from him being the inventor, being the creative genius that he is. It gets undercut by him being the underling to Iron Man. So he doesn't get to shine. And that would not have been the case if Iron Man wasn't in Homecoming. Now, I'm not against that personally. I can see the drawback. I appreciate like Andrew Garfield being the inventor much more than either of the other two. But at the same time, it works because it's in the MCU canon. When you take Sony's characters back to Sony, they're just going to keep making good Spider-Man movies. Keep in mind, Marvel did not make Homecoming. Marvel did not make Far From Home. Those movies flippin' rocked, and those were made by Sony. So there was creative influence from Kevin Feige, which, by the way, like, it's really good to have Kevin Feige involved in your creative process. It really, truly is. He's a genius. That being said, it's not going to be that hard for them to make close to $1 billion or more with a Spider-Man property, because every Spider-Man property ever, except for the Into the Spider-Verse film, which is an animated, made over $700 million. That's a big win. And that's including Venom. All of them. They're all made that much, including Spider-Man 3, including Andrew Garfield. All right, they're all big time wins, big successes. Spider-Man is selling out theaters everywhere. And even if theaters aren't open, it's going to sell. They're not going to have a problem. Marvel will have the problem. Marvel's going to be like, well, crap. What do we do now? They basically killed off and gotten rid of a few of their biggest players. And now they've left us with Captain Marvel as the supposed lead of the new MCU, which almost, not everyone, more than half, much more than half of the fan base, very upset with, because she's not likable. She's cool, she's just not likable. I know there's going to be a lot of females that disagree with that. I'm sure that's probably the case, but she's not a winner for half of the audience because half, mostly the men, are not fans. And that's, it's not a sexist thing. It's just because Brie Larson's not a particularly likable actress. Even her attitude when she's playing Captain Marvel is all like looking down her nose at everybody and just like sneering, and it's just not. It's not friendly. It's not likable. I know she's trying to be like tough and whatever, but it just doesn't come off that way. It comes off very like snooty. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what it is. And I think Marvel will be hurt much more by the loss of Spider-Man than Sony would be of the loss of the MCU. Really, truly, I do. Because Marvel's going to be fine on their own. Sony would also be fine on their own. In fact, I think Sony might actually be better off. And I don't want them to split. So keep in mind, I say that, but I do not want that to happen. I do not want them to split. I want them to have the shared universe. I like that, and I want to see that. So, but it wouldn't hurt them. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and then yeah, that's it. All right, that's all of the comments for today. If I could leave you guys with just one last thing, that would be this. Please, if you guys get a second, if you guys want to support my channel and help me grow and get to that 1,000 subscribers, please do this. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. That is completely free for you, costs you no money whatsoever, and it's going to help me grow a ton, and it's going to help me get to the point where I can then make money on this channel from like ads and things like that. That'd be super awesome. It's going to open up so many more opportunities for me on the platform that are not available to me now, like including mobile live streaming. Once you get to 1,000 subscribers, there's certain other criteria as well, but there's plenty of plans I have for that as well. Going out and interviewing people on the street would be a lot of fun. So help me get to that point. I'd love to do that for you guys, and that's totally free. All you got to do is like, share, comment, and subscribe, and that's going to help me grow. So another thing that I wanted to show you guys is, if you get a second, go over to the link in my description below so you can check out my TeePublic account, where I can sell you guys t-shirts, mugs, sweaters. You got like onesies for babies, wall art, notebooks, mugs, pillows, totes, tapestries, pins, phone cases, laptop cases, sweaters. They even are selling masks now, by the way. So that's really fun. You guys can get yourself any of these designs, or if you want to get one specific to what we are talking about, we also have DC designs. You can check the different labels on the left side here: Star Wars, fantasy, Power Rangers, Marvel, DC, that kind of thing. Check it out. Check out all these different designs. Click on one you like. If you guys like Adam West and he's your favorite Batman, you can go ahead and click on that one. It'll take you to the actual page so you can see the different t-shirts, designs, fits. You can get long sleeve and that sort of thing, or you could even go ahead and get yourself like a sticker for $2. Lots of fun options that help me grow as a YouTuber, because this is another way you can get money in my pocket so that I can get like better lighting, better, cameras, microphones, resources that are going to help this channel improve and get better, and so that I can make more Funko Pop videos for you guys, which I haven't gotten a lot of time to do, but I have plenty of Funko Pops I wanted to do reviews of for you, including but not limited to this giant Fantastic Four The Thing, which I got today. So, I will be able to show you guys all that and more if you guys get yourself some sick merch, just like you see down below me and on the screen. So, anyways, let's go ahead and cut this to the end. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and check the link down in the description for some more merch. Stay tuned for more right here on The Stuff of Legend. Hey guys, D-Lo here. Thank you so much for this video. Give it a thumbs up. And remember, all of your nerd friends, I know you got them, and you know who they are. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about this discussion. Let me know what you would like to see me do a video on next. Subscribe to the channel because you're a legend, and we have that in common. Also, be sure to turn on notifications to be notified right away when I upload my next video, or so that you can be alerted when I go live next time. That way you'll never miss a thing. Check out the other videos on the channel so that we can have a discussion on all your favorite movies and TV topics. Thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more right here on The Stuff of Legend.